The rain came down hard that night. Thick clouds covered the stars, and the wind howled through the trees. Cal sat in his small wooden cabin at the edge of the forest, sipping hot tea while reading an old book. His dog lay curled near the fireplace, snoring softly. Everything was peaceful until a loud knock shattered the silence. Knock, knock, knock. Cal froze. Nobody ever came out here. His cabin was miles away from the nearest colony station. He wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, he got up, placed the book down, and grabbed the old energy rifle he kept near the door. He looked through the small viewing screen and saw something strange. An alien woman stood at his door. She looked exhausted, soaked from the rain, her arms tightly wrapped around two small children. Their eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and their clothes were torn and muddy. She knocked again, this time softer. Cal hesitated for a moment, then opened the door just enough to speak. "Who are you? What do you want?" The woman stepped closer, shivering. Her voice was soft but clear. "Please, I beg you, I promise to be very submissive. My kids, they are very well behaved. We just need shelter. Just tonight." Cal blinked. Of all the things she could have said, that wasn't what he expected. Her words were careful, like she had practiced them before, but she was clearly scared. Her skin was a pale blue with a soft purplish tone, and her small elf-like ears twitched at every sound. Her children clung to her legs, silent but alert. He could have turned her away, said no, but something in her voice, maybe the desperation, reminded him of stories from Earth, stories of people who ran for safety, hoping the stranger might show kindness. With a sigh, Cal opened the door fully and stepped aside. "Get in. Quick, before someone sees." The woman's eyes widened in relief. Thank you so much." She walked in quickly, guiding the children toward the warm fireplace. The dog barked once, then went quiet as the children sat beside him, trembling from cold. Cal locked the door behind them and placed his rifle back on the hook. "I don't know who you are or why you're here," he said, handing her a towel. "But if you meant any harm, I think you'd already done it." "I don't want harm," she said, drying her face. "I only want safety for my children." He watched as she helped them out of their wet clothes and wrapped them in blankets. They didn't cry. They didn't whine. Just sat there, eyes wide and quiet. It was strange, almost too quiet for kids. "Your name?" he asked. "Nira," she replied. "My children are Toma and Leia." "And you know I'm human," Cal said, sitting in a chair across from her. "Yes," she nodded. "That's why I came." That surprised him. Most aliens avoid humans. They say we're unpredictable. "I know," Nira said, her voice lower now. "But humans are also brave. And kind when no one else is. I had nowhere else to go." She looked down at her children, brushing their damp hair. "We escaped from a place not meant for families. I can explain more tomorrow, if you let us stay tonight." Cal leaned back, thinking. He had lived alone for years. This world was mostly peaceful, but still underdeveloped in parts. Smugglers and bounty hunters sometimes passed through. He'd never gotten involved with alien politics or conflicts. But now, an alien woman and her two strange children sat in his living room, warming themselves by his fire. His instincts told him this wasn't normal. There would be trouble. But his heart told him they were in real danger. "All right," he said at last. "You can sleep here. I have a guest room. But just for tonight. We'll talk in the morning." Nira's shoulders relaxed, and her eyes filled with quiet emotion. "Thank you, human. Call me Calendar." She nodded. "Thank you, Calendar." He got up and showed her the spare room. The kids followed her closely, never speaking, but watching everything around them. Cal noticed how smart their eyes looked. Observant. Calm. Not like ordinary children. Once they were settled in, Cal returned to his chair and stared into the fire. His dog sat beside him again, ears perked, sensing the change in the house. He didn't know who Nira really was. He didn't know what she was running from. But tonight, something strange had begun. Outside, the storm continued. Inside, silence returned. But the peaceful life Cal once knew was about to change. And deep down, he knew there was no going back. The morning light broke gently through the windows of Cal's cabin. The rain had stopped, but the ground outside was soaked, and the forest was silent except for the sound of dripping leaves. Cal stood at the kitchen counter, brewing strong coffee while keeping an ear toward the guest room. He didn't sleep much. The unexpected arrival of the alien woman and her 2 kids kept him awake, thinking, who were they really? What were they running from? And why did she speak as if she was offering herself like a servant? The door creaked open, and Nira stepped out. She looked tired but clean now. Her hair was dry and tied back, and her skin had a natural glow under the morning light. She bowed her head lightly when she saw a calendar. "Good morning," she said softly. "You all sleep well?" Cal asked, handing her a steaming cup. "Yes," she said, wrapping her hands around the warmth. "Thank you." "The children are still resting." Cal nodded and motioned for her to sit. "Time to talk, Nira. I need to know who I've let into my house." Nira sat down across from him at the wooden table. She looked around for a moment before speaking. "My world was taken," she began. "We used to be a peaceful people, scientists, engineers, thinkers. But a group of warlords came from the far sectors. They took everything. They didn't destroy the cities. They kept them. And they kept us too." She paused, looking down at her cup. "I was a researcher. I studied power systems, artificial suns, and energy shields. That's why they kept me alive. But when they found out about my children," her voice trembled slightly, but she steadied it. "Toma and Leia were part of a new generation. Their minds grow faster. They learn quickly. The warlords saw them as tools. They wanted to train them early, use them for their own machines and weapons." Cal leaned in slightly. "So you escaped?" "Yes," she nodded. "I took them and ran. I had a ship. It broke down 2 systems away. We walked, hid, begged for help. No one wanted to risk helping a runaway." "Until you found me," Cal said. "I heard stories," she said, "of humans, that even though others call you wild or dangerous, you protect. You help when no one else does." Cal didn't answer right away. He wasn't used to being called a protector. He was just a quiet man who fixed broken machines and grew food. But still, her words made him think. "And what was that last night?" Cal asked. "Why did you say you'd be submissive and your kids were well-behaved?" Nira looked down, ashamed. "Because that's what others expect. Some species will only help if they feel power over you. I thought, maybe if I showed you I wouldn't be a problem, you'd accept me." Cal frowned. "I don't need servants, Nira. I'm not like that." She looked up, her eyes soft. "I believe you now." There was silence between them for a moment, broken only by the quiet hum of the heater. Then Nira said something that surprised him again. "If you want, I can work. I fix machines, rebuild energy cores, even build shields. I know your generator isn't running at full power." Cal raised an eyebrow. "You could tell." She smiled gently. "I heard it humming unevenly when we entered. The core is slipping. I can help." He rubbed the back of his neck, impressed but still cautious. "So you're not just a mother on the run. You're a scientist, and your kids are." "What?" "Geniuses. They're smart," she said. "But they're also just children. They want to play, laugh, and live freely." At that moment, little Leia peeked from behind the door. Her big eyes scanned the room before she stepped out quietly and hugged her mother's leg. Cal smiled slightly. "She's very quiet. She learns by watching," Nira said, stroking the girl's hair. "She's already picked up some of your language." Cal stood and went to a small cabinet, pulling out some dry fruit snacks. He knelt and offered one to Leia. She looked up at her mother first, whom nodded gently. Then she reached out and took it with both hands. She says thank you, Nira translated. You're welcome, Cal replied with a small smile. He stood up and looked out the window. You can stay for now, but if someone's looking for you, I need to be ready. Nira stood beside him. I understand, and I'll do my part. You gave us safety. That's more than anyone else has done. Cal nodded slowly. The woman he let into his house wasn't weak. She was strong, just tired and hiding. And her children weren't just smart. They were something new, something special, something someone might come looking for. The sun had barely risen above the hills when Cal stepped outside. He took a deep breath of the cold morning air. The rain had washed the dust off everything, and the trees glistened with fresh droplets. His small cabin, hidden in the trees, had always felt like a safe place. But now, things felt different. Inside, Nira was cooking the simple breakfast using earth ingredients mixed with small spice packets she had carried. Her movements were smooth and quiet. The children sat at the table, drawing shapes in a notebook Cal had given them. They still hadn't said much, but their drawings were full of machines, wires, and strange-looking devices. Cal ate in silence, watching them closely. You weren't joking, he said, nodding toward the drawings. They're definitely not average kids. Nira smiled gently. Their minds process things faster. Toma solved a solar equation before he learned to read. Leia understands circuitry by just watching me work. That's impressive, Cal said, though he couldn't hide his concern. But also dangerous. If the wrong people find out, they'll come for them. They already are, Nira whispered. The bounty notices are everywhere. I heard broadcasts before the ship crashed. There's a reward. Alive. Cal leaned back in his chair. He had taken in a mother and her 2 kids out of instinct. But now it was clear, this wasn't a small problem. If bounty hunters or trackers arrive, they wouldn't care about his peaceful life. They would search, question, and maybe destroy everything to get to Nira and her children. Later that afternoon, while Nira worked in the small tool shed repairing his old generator, Cal went to the nearby ridge where he kept his scanner tower. It was an old model, used mainly to track weather and small ship movements. He dusted it off, activated it, and checked the logs. His eyes narrowed. A patrol drone had passed overhead just before midnight. It didn't land, but it circled once and moved on. Cal returned to the cabin and didn't say anything right away. He watched as Nira adjusted wires inside the generator, her hands glowing faintly with tiny tools made of alien metal. You're sure no one followed you here? He finally asked. She paused, then shook her head. I'm not sure. I was careful, but I was also scared. The ship fell apart in the forest. I ran toward the first human signal I could detect. It was yours. Lucky me, Cal said with a dry smile. Unlucky us if someone traced that signal, Nira replied. But I can shut it down. The pulse beacon in your cabin. It's old, but still sends out identity codes. I can reroute it. You think someone's already looking? Cal asked. I know they are, she said. And I also know they won't stop. That night, Cal stayed up late, watching the skies through his small drone scope. Around midnight, he spotted a ship high above. Black, triangular, moving silently. Not a patrol. It didn't match any standard government patterns. He marked the location and watched it hover, then drift away like a shadow. The next morning, he built small traps around the edge of his property. Nothing dangerous, just early warning systems made from scrap, sensors, and wire. Nira helped. She didn't ask questions. As the days passed, the children began to speak more. Toma asked Cal how engines worked. Leia helped him fix a broken farming drone. They smiled more, played quietly in the garden, and even learned to feed the dog, who had grown fond of them. But the peace didn't last. 3 days later, a noise echoed through the trees, fast and sharp, like something breaking through the air. Cal grabbed his rifle and ran to the ridge. A small black craft was landing in the valley below. It didn't bear any flags or marks. He rushed back to the cabin. "We've got company. Unknown ship. Looks like a scout or a bounty craft." Nera went still. "They found us." "We don't run," Cal said. "If we run, they'll follow. We make them think this place is defended." "You're just one man," she said. "I'm one human," he replied. "That's more than enough." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then let me help. If they come, we won't be ready unless we work together." That night, they began fortifying the cabin, not with weapons, but with clever traps, distractions, energy pulses, and hidden tunnels. The children watched with curious eyes. Toma finally spoke with a firm voice. "Can I help protect too?" Cal placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You already are." And just like that, a lonely man's cabin in the woods became something else. A shelter, a fortress, a secret worth protecting. The cabin's transformation had begun. Cal's once quiet refuge now bristled with hidden defenses. Small motion-triggered alerts were set around the perimeter. Scattered underbrush disguised sensors that would detect approaching vehicles. Nera's expertise became clear as she modified Cal's outdated energy core. It hummed stronger now, delivering steady power without fluctuations. "You've done this before," Cal said, leaning against the doorframe as he watched Nera work. She glanced up briefly. "I've built systems far more complex than this. I may not be a soldier, but I know how to protect my own." Her calm, efficient movements impressed him. The more he saw, the more he realized how valuable her knowledge was. Not just for survival, her skills could change everything about how he maintained his small homestead. With every adjustment she made, the place felt more secure, more prepared. The kids, Toma and Leia, had settled into a routine. While Nera worked on the generator, the children explored the forests just beyond the cabin's perimeter. Under Cal's watchful eye, they collected leaves, rocks, and bits of broken machinery left from the colony's early days. Toma often drew intricate diagrams, and Leia would point out places on the map where she thought they should hide equipment. One afternoon, Cal found Leia tinkering with a disassembled drone in the tool shed. She looked up at him with wide eyes. "May I try to fix it?" she asked softly. "You sure you know what you're doing?" Cal asked, though he already suspected the answer. Leia nodded. "Mother showed me once. I remember." Cal handed her a wrench and stepped back, watching as the young alien girl carefully reconnected wires and adjusted the drone's power core. Within minutes, the machine's tiny motor whirred back to life. She smiled shyly and handed it to him. "Here," she said. "Now you can see farther." "Thanks, kid," Cal said, genuinely impressed. "You've got talent." Meanwhile, Toma was making notes about the patrol patterns Cal had described. He had a natural ability to predict when a drone might fly over and suggested they plant more trees around the cabin to block visibility. Cal found himself listening to the boy's ideas more and more. But it wasn't just the children. Nera's skills and determination set the tone. She wasn't the helpless fugitive Cal had assumed when she first arrived. She carried herself with quiet strength, and her knowledge of alien technology far exceeded anything Cal had seen before. Each day, she proved her worth as an equal partner in their efforts to stay hidden and safe. "Why didn't you tell me all of this from the start?" Cal asked one evening, sitting with Nera on the porch. The sky was clear, the stars bright overhead. The children were asleep inside. "At first, I wasn't sure if you would help us," Nera admitted. "I thought it would be easier to offer submission. Many species respond better if they feel superior." "Not me," Cal said. "I see that now," she said, meeting his gaze. "But I also had to be careful. If you knew too much, it might put you in more danger." Cal nodded slowly. "I get it. But now that I know, we've got a better chance." Nera hesitated before speaking again. "There's something else." Toma and Leia. They're not just intelligent. They're part of a project that was supposed to secure our people's future. Before the warlords came, we had a research program to enhance cognitive development. I was part of the team. When everything fell apart, the program was shut down. But my children were different. What do you mean? Cal asked. They were the first, the only ones to reach full potential, she explained. Toma's mind processes information faster than a computer. Leia has an intuitive understanding of energy systems. Together, they could have been the start of a new age for our people. Cal rubbed his jaw, trying to absorb it all. But now they're just kids running for their lives. For now, Nira said firmly, but they'll grow. And when they do, they'll need to remember that not everyone who offers help can be trusted. You've shown them that kindness doesn't mean weakness. That's important. Cal looked out at the dark forest. The wind rustled the trees, and the faint hum of the generator provided a steady background noise. He felt the weight of what Nira was telling him. This wasn't just about protecting a mother and her kids. This was about safeguarding something far bigger, something that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. All right, Cal said, standing up. We'll keep building, keep preparing. But when trouble comes, we're going to face it head-on, together. Nira stood too, her expression calm but resolute. Together. And with that, the two of them continued working late into the night, side by side. It was no longer just about survival. It was about building a future, one small step at a time. As the days passed, Cal found himself thinking less about his peaceful, solitary life and more about the people he had taken in. The small cabin, once silent except for the occasional hum of the generator or the bark of his dog, now felt alive. Nira worked tirelessly, often showing Cal methods of maintenance and construction he never would have learned on his own. The children, bright, curious, and strangely disciplined, helped without being asked. They had become part of his routine. But the peace was fragile. Each evening, Cal would sit on the porch, rifle within reach, scanning the skies. The small black ship he had seen before hadn't returned, but Cal had lived on the frontier long enough to know that once something or someone found you, it rarely stopped looking. One afternoon, while Nira fine-tuned the cabin's shielding, Cal noticed something on the ridge where he kept his scanner tower. A faint flash of light caught his eye. It wasn't from the sun. It was the metallic glint of movement. He quickly climbed to the top of the ridge and scanned the area with his binoculars. At first, there was nothing. Then he saw it, a small, sleek probe-like device hovering near the trees, moving silently as it scanned the ground. Cal dropped low and scrambled back toward the cabin. By the time he returned, Nira was already waiting, her tools still in hand. She could tell from the look on his face that something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked quietly. "A drone," Cal said, catching his breath. "Small, fast, probably scouting for something." "Someone sent it," Nira said. Her voice was calm, but her expression was tense. "I don't know if it saw the cabin, but it's close. If it's connected to that ship we saw, it might be relaying our location," Cal said. "We need to be ready." Nira nodded. "I can increase the shielding and mask the energy signals. But if they send a ground team, they won't find us unprepared," Cal said firmly. He pulled out his toolkit and handed Nira a few spare power cells. Together, they worked to reinforce the defenses. Cal rewired the perimeter sensors to give them an earlier warning. Nira adjusted the frequency of the energy shield, making it harder to detect. Toma and Leia helped where they could, holding tools and offering quiet suggestions that often turned out to be brilliant. Leia even managed to modify one of the old farming drones into a decoy. It would light up like a beacon, drawing attention away from the cabin. By the time night fell, the cabin was as secure as it could be. Cal sat at the table with Nira, the children sleeping in the guest room. The glow of the modified generator cast a warm light over the room. "Do you think they'll come tonight?" Nira asked. Cal shook his head. I don't know. But if they do, they won't be able to just walk in. I've lived out here long enough to know how to make it difficult for unwanted guests. Nira sipped her tea. You didn't have to do all this. For us. Cal met her gaze. You and the kids didn't ask for this life. And you came here trusting that I wouldn't turn you away. I'm not about to stop now. She smiled faintly. Humans are different. No one else I've met would do what you've done. Guess that makes me special, Cal said with a wry grin. That night, Cal stayed up watching the ridge. The forest was dark, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. His dog, sensing the tension, lay silently at his feet, eyes alert. Hours passed with nothing but the occasional rustle of leaves. Then, just as Cal began to relax, a faint blue light flickered in the distance. He grabbed his rifle and scanned the tree line through his binoculars. Two figures emerged, cloaked in dark armor, carrying what looked like advanced scanning equipment. They moved carefully, their steps deliberate. Behind them, another drone floated silently, its lens blinking as it searched the area. Cal's heart pounded. He slipped back into the cabin and woke Nira. They're here, he whispered. Nira nodded, her face calm but determined. The shielding is holding. They can't pinpoint us yet. They will, Cal said. And when they do, we need to make them think this place isn't worth their time. As the figures crept closer, Cal triggered one of the traps. A hidden speaker played a loud, distorted noise that echoed through the forest. The figures froze, looking around for the source. Then, another trap released a flash of light and a puff of smoke. The intruders hesitated, their movements less confident now. Keep them guessing, Cal muttered. If they think there's more danger ahead, they might pull back. Sure enough, after a tense few minutes of scanning and testing the area, the figures retreated. The drone followed them, disappearing into the night. Cal waited until he was certain they were gone before lowering his rifle. Nira let out a slow breath. They'll be back. Maybe, Cal said. But now we know they're watching, and we'll be ready. The next morning, Cal stood in the early light, surveying the forest from his ridge. The encounter the night before left him uneasy. Whoever sent those scouts knew the general area. The traps and distractions worked for now, but it was only a matter of time before they tried again. Nira joined him, her face serious. What do we do if they come back with more? Cal scratched his beard thoughtfully. If they send a bigger team, we won't be able to rely on tricks. We need to show them this place is well defended. Something that makes them hesitate before trying again. What do you have in mind? Nira asked. Cal looked toward the tools shed where his old mining mech sat covered in dust and vines. I have something that might work, but it's a bit unconventional. Nira followed his gaze and raised an eyebrow. You think that old mech can still function? I kept it for parts, Cal admitted. It hasn't been powered up in years, but if I can get the systems running, it might make them think twice. A fully operational mech standing guard would look like a serious threat. Nira nodded. If you're willing to try, I'll help. Together, they began the slow, careful process of reviving the ancient machine. Nira examined the core components and made several adjustments. Toma and Leia, excited to help, brought them tools and sat nearby, sketching out diagrams of how the mech systems might work. Toma pointed out areas where the energy flow could be improved, and Leia identified several corroded parts that needed replacement. I can build something to stabilize the core, Nira said after studying the mech's old power system. But I'll need those spare cells you keep in the storage bay. They're all yours, Cal replied, wiping sweat from his brow. By nightfall, the mech was upright. It wasn't fully functional yet, but it stood tall, its bulky frame visible through the trees. Cal's plan was to power it just enough to light up its sensors and create movement. It wouldn't have to fight, just look ready to. The children watched in awe as the mech's optics flickered to life. Toma clapped quietly, and Leia whispered, "It's so big. It's big enough to make them think twice," Cal said, smiling despite his exhaustion. But they weren't done yet. Cal and Nira worked late into the night, connecting a motion-triggered light system to the mech's arm. If anyone approached, the lights would flare, giving the impression that it was scanning its surroundings. Cal also added a low-frequency hum that made the mech seem as though it was fully operational. The final touch came from Nira, who modified a small device to emit a false signal. Anyone scanning for energy readings would pick up something that looked like a high-powered defense grid. Cal was impressed with her ingenuity. "You're full of surprises," he said as they stood back and admired their work. "You're the one who had an old mech in your shed," Nira replied with a small smile. The next morning, Cal ran a few tests. The mech moved its arm slightly, the lights flashed, and the hum was steady. The traps around the cabin were still in place, and the shielding Nira installed was running perfectly. It felt like they had a chance. Then, just after noon, the intruders returned. Cal saw the ship first. It hovered just above the treetops, sleek and black. This time it dropped off a team of 4 figures in dark armor. They moved cautiously, their weapons ready. Cal signaled to Nira, who stayed inside with the children. She activated the mech system. From his vantage point, Cal watched as the intruders approached the cabin's perimeter. Suddenly, the mech's lights flared, and its arm moved. The intruders froze. They scanned the area, their movements sharp and deliberate. The hum from the mech grew louder. One of them raised a scanner, likely trying to pinpoint the source of the energy readings. Nira's false signal was doing its job. The figures hesitated, speaking quietly to each other. Then, as if testing the defenses, one of them fired a small projectile toward the mech. The projectile hit the mech's outer shell and ricocheted off harmlessly. The mech's lights flickered in response, and its arm shifted again. The intruders stepped back, clearly uncertain if it was fully functional or not. After a few tense moments, the figures retreated to their ship. Cal stayed perfectly still, his rifle ready, until the ship vanished over the horizon. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. Nira emerged from the cabin. "They're gone. For now," Cal said, "but they'll think twice before coming back." She smiled. "That mech might not be perfect, but it did the job." "It's not about being perfect," Cal replied. "It's about making them think we're more trouble than we're worth." As the sun set, Cal looked at the mech standing guard, its lights dimming as the system powered down for the night. It wasn't just an old machine anymore. It was a symbol of the defense they had built together. And it was enough. As the days passed, Cal found himself thinking less about his peaceful, solitary life and more about the people he had taken in. The small cabin, once silent except for the occasional hum of the generator or the bark of his dog, now felt alive. Nira worked tirelessly, often showing Cal methods of maintenance and construction he never would have learned on his own. The children, bright, curious, and strangely disciplined, had become part of his routine. But the peace was fragile. Each evening, Cal would sit on the porch, rifle within reach, scanning the skies. The small black ship he had seen before hadn't returned, but Cal had lived on the frontier long enough to know that once something or someone found you, it rarely stopped looking. One afternoon, while Nira fine-tuned the cabin's shielding, Cal noticed something on the ridge where he kept his scanner tower. A faint flash of light caught his eye. It wasn't from the sun. It was the metallic glint of movement. He quickly climbed to the top of the ridge and scanned the area with his binoculars. At first, there was nothing. Then he saw it, a small, sleek probe-like device hovering near the trees, moving silently as it scanned the ground. Cal dropped low and scrambled back toward the cabin. By the time he returned, Nira was already waiting, her tools still in hand. She could tell from the look on his face that something was wrong. "What is it?" she asked quietly. "A drone," Cal said, catching his breath. "Small, fast, probably scouting for something." "Someone sent it," Nira said. Her voice was calm, but her expression was tense. "I don't know if it saw the cabin." But it's close. If it's connected to that ship we saw, it might be relaying our location, Cal said. We need to be ready. Nira nodded. I can increase the shielding and mask the energy signals. But if they send a ground team, they won't find us unprepared, Cal said firmly. He pulled out his toolkit and handed Nira a few spare power cells. Together, they worked to reinforce the defenses. Cal rewired the perimeter sensors to give them an earlier warning. Nira adjusted the frequency of the energy shield, making it harder to detect. Toma and Leia helped where they could, holding tools and offering quiet suggestions that often turned out to be brilliant. Leia even managed to modify one of the old farming drones into a decoy. It would light up like a beacon, drawing attention away from the cabin. By the time night fell, the cabin was as secure as it could be. Cal sat at the table with Nira, the children sleeping in the guest room. The glow of the modified generator cast a warm light over the room. Do you think they'll come tonight? Nira asked. Cal shook his head. I don't know, but if they do, they won't be able to just walk in. I've lived out here long enough to know how to make it difficult for unwanted guests. Nira sipped her tea. You didn't have to do all this for us. Cal met her gaze. You and the kids didn't ask for this life, and you came here trusting that I wouldn't turn you away. I'm not about to stop now. She smiled faintly. Humans are different. No one else I've met would do what you've done. Guess that makes me special, Cal said with a wry grin. That night, Cal stayed up watching the ridge. The forest was dark, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. His dog, sensing the tension, lay silently at his feet, eyes alert. Hours passed with nothing but the occasional rustle of leaves. Then, just as Cal began to relax, a faint blue light flickered in the distance. He grabbed his rifle and scanned the tree line through his binoculars. Two figures emerged, cloaked in dark armor, carrying what looked like advanced scanning equipment. They moved carefully, their steps deliberate. Behind them, another drone floated silently, its lens blinking as it searched the area. Cal's heart pounded. He slipped back into the cabin and woke Nira. They're here, he whispered. Nira nodded, her face calm but determined. The shielding is holding. They can't pinpoint us yet. They will, Cal said. And when they do, we need to make them think this place isn't worth their time. As the figures crept closer, Cal triggered one of the traps. A hidden speaker played a loud, distorted noise that echoed through the forest. The figures froze, looking around for the source. Then, another trap released a flash of light and a puff of smoke. The intruders hesitated, their movements less confident now. Keep them guessing, Cal muttered. If they think there's more danger ahead, they might pull back. Sure enough, after a tense few minutes of scanning and testing the area, the figures retreated. The drone followed them, disappearing into the night. Cal waited until he was certain they were gone before lowering his rifle. Nira let out a slow breath. They'll be back. Maybe, Cal said, but now we know they're watching, and we'll be ready. The cabin was quiet that evening, though the air still carried the tension of the day's events. Cal stood near the window, gazing at the mech now stationed at the perimeter. Its towering presence gave him a sense of security, though he knew it wouldn't stop someone truly determined to reach them. Behind him, Nira was reading a story to the children. They sat together on the couch, their voices soft, the occasional giggle breaking the stillness. It was a normal scene, something Cal hadn't expected to witness in his small, lonely home. When the story ended, Nira tucked the children in to the guest bed, gently brushing their hair back and whispering words in her native tongue. Cal didn't understand the language, but he could tell they were words of comfort and love. He smiled faintly, remembering a time long ago when his own mother had done the same for him. Once the children were asleep, Nira joined Cal at the table. The generator hummed steadily, the warm glow of the lights making the cabin feel unusually cozy. Nira poured herself a cup of tea and sat across from him. Today went better than I expected, she said. Those intruders won't forget what they saw, Cal replied. But it's still only a matter of time. I'm sure their boss will want answers. Then we'll be ready, Nira said firmly. We'll keep improving the defenses. We'll find more ways to protect ourselves. Cal studied her face. She seemed stronger now than when she had first arrived. The fear was still there, but it was tempered by resolve. She wasn't running anymore. She was standing her ground. You've changed, he said quietly. Nira tilted her head, curious. How so? When you first came here, you offered to serve, to be submissive, just to get shelter, Cal said. Now you're leading the charge. You're taking control. She thought about his words, then smiled. I think it's because you gave me the space to find myself again. I was so used to hiding, to pretending to be less than I am, that I forgot who I really was. Cal nodded slowly. I'm just glad you remembered. They sat in silence for a moment, sipping their tea. The sounds of the forest outside were peaceful, almost soothing. It was a rare moment of calm, and Cal found himself wishing it could last. Cal, Nira said softly, you've done so much for us, more than anyone else ever has. Why? Cal looked into his cup, then out the window at the mech. I don't know. Maybe it's just who I am. I never liked seeing people, any people, treated badly. And you reminded me of someone I cared about a long time ago. Nira didn't press further, sensing the topic was painful. Instead, she reached out and placed her hand on his. Thank you. For everything. Cal cleared his throat, feeling a bit awkward. It's nothing. Just doing what I can. They stayed like that for a while, quiet but connected, until the sound of a distant rumble broke the silence. Cal was on his feet instantly, grabbing his rifle and heading for the door. Nira followed. What is it? Could be another ship, Cal said, scanning the sky. The rumble grew louder, then stopped. Cal adjusted his binoculars, peering toward the horizon. After a moment, he spotted a small transport vessel descending near the ridge. It's not the same kind of ship as before, Nira said, looking over his shoulder. It might not be hostile. Or it might be bait, Cal replied, lowering the binoculars. Either way, we need to be careful. As they watched, a single figure emerged from the ship. It was tall, humanoid, and wearing civilian clothing. The figure raised its hands, signaling peace. Cal kept his rifle steady, his eyes narrow. What do we do? Nira asked. We wait, Cal said. If they come closer, we make sure they see the mech first. If they still want to talk, we'll figure it out then. Sure enough, the figure stayed at a safe distance, shouting something Cal couldn't quite hear. He adjusted the scope on his rifle and saw that the person wasn't armed. They seemed to be holding a data pad, waving it around as if trying to show something. They're not attacking, Nira said. Maybe they're here to deliver a message. Or a warning, Cal muttered. We'll find out soon enough. For now, Cal kept the rifle trained, ready to defend his small family. Nira stood beside him, her posture calm yet prepared. Together, they faced the unknown, no longer just a man and his guests, but a unit, each one relying on the other. And as the stars began to fade into the morning light, Cal felt a strange sense of hope. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were building something worth fighting for.